All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Yasin Dahi. I am the Senior Product Manager here at LibreTexts, and I'm thrilled to be here with some of my colleagues to talk to you about H5P Studio, H5P in LibreStudio, and how we use it to build interactive content into our textbooks, into our courses, in our LMSs and such. I'm joined today by three wonderful colleagues of mine, Brittany Zemlick, who is the professor who instructs in the ESL departments of Southwestern College and Grossman College. Dr. Cristina Moon, who is in the language arts faculty from Shabbat College, and Dr. Stefanie Leacock from the Department of Biology at University of Arkansas Little Rock. Why don't you guys give a wave so everybody? Oh, your cameras are on. So the folks with the cameras on, that's who we're here to really listen to today. We do have a bit of an agenda, but obviously feel free to chime in, ask your questions. We have the chat available to you. And you're not going to hear me talking a whole lot. And by the way, it does say Delmar on the chat there. I'm not Delmar, obviously. I hope that's clear. But I'm sure Delmar and the rest of the folks will be joining us soon. Our agenda today, we're going to do a quick intro of, what is H5P, what is LibreStudio, but really what we're here why we're here is to hear our colleagues, Brittany, Cristina, and Stefanie, kind of talk about their experiences with H5P and with LibreStudio. Once that section concludes, we will come back and do a hands-on exercise if you'd like, and actually build some H5P within LibreStudio. Of course, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers here. So with that, let's start talking about H5P. What is it and why should we really care? H5P stands for HTML5 package. Not really important, but what you can do with it is really cool. Basically, with H5P, you can create interactive content such as interactive quizzes, interactive presentations, videos, and so on and so forth. It's basically a web-based tool that essentially competes with something like Captivate or Articulate, if you will, or even tools such as Kahoot or Socrates and tools like that. Obviously, I'm not going to bore you with the details of what H5P is, so I'm just going to throw into the chat here, if I can find it, a link to h5p.org, where you will learn a lot more about H5P than I can actually explain in one session. As I mentioned, you can do a lot with H5P. There's over 50 different content types that you can create, not just quizzes and presentations, but you can create, interactive games such as, memory games and arithmetic quizzes and so on and so forth. So there's a lot in there that might be useful for you, might not be useful for others, but there's a lot of, it's kind of like a mixed bag of treats and interactive content that you can create. So feel free to check out that link and see what's available. So that takes us into what is LibreStudio. And obviously H5P being as cool as it is, we want to provide folks an ability to, a place where they can create H5P, share it, search for H5P created by others, and just basically a community of practice that allows instructors to learn from each other and work on content authoring with each other. And so that's what essentially LibreStudio is. There are currently 7,000 and over 7,000, I should say, openly shared H5P resources within LibreStudio. I'll share the link to LibreStudio here in the chat. There are over 300 active instructors who are actively creating those 7,000 plus resources. You can create H5P, you can remix other H5P shared by others. It's a way for you to share your own H5P and build a portfolio of your own. Other interesting facts, it's built on open source technologies, and LibreStudio itself will actually be distributed as an open source platform for anybody to build for their own organization or schools, if you will. And of course, it's built in partnership with Learnful Labs in Canada. If you do feel like following along and kind of experimenting with LibreStudio, I invite you to use the following registration code. when you register for an account there. Sorry, I'm just going to go into the chat here. Can your presentation view, can you use presentation if you only have the slides showing? Oh, sorry about that. One thing I forgot to do is just share the slides here, the slide deck here, and the registration code for if you'd like to register into LibreStudio. So that's kind of my spiel on H5P and LibreStudio. You're going to get a kind of a better sense of how instructors are using LibreStudio because we have some notes from the field from our faculty members, Brittany, Cristina, and Stefanie. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Professor Brittany Zemlick.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I was just going to talk a little bit about how I use H5P in my course book. I made an online course book in LibreTexts called Pronunciation Projects for ELLs. It's a textbook designed for approximately intermediate level students. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you what my textbook looks like first of all. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is how my coursebook appears in LibreText, and I've opened up a few tabs so I can show you specifically some of my H5P activities. I've got 4 different units in here, and then each unit has a few different links for different parts of the unit. I use H5P specifically for things like vocabulary review, and this was originally designed as a pronunciation class, so there are some questions about like voiced and unvoiced types of things. If you're an ESL instructor, specific questions, or if you're teaching grammar, you could do specific questions about that. So I'll show you what that looks like. This is a vocabulary review activity from one of the texts that it's a video that they watch. And when I was creating this, it was actually a couple of years ago now. And so I don't know how the accessibility has improved since then, but at the time there were only 2 H5P activities that you could do that were definitely accessible. And so like for screen readers and things. And so those are the 2 that I used. So there's the multiple choice activity. You can read the question, click on it, and then check it to see if it's correct. Show the solution, retry, and then you get it right. So you can do that for each of these multiple choice activities. And you can see for my ESL students, I needed to add in pictures to help with comprehension of meaning. So I was able to do that. So that's pretty cool. And then if I scroll down a little bit, got quite a lot of questions here. So just so that you know, each of these has to be an individual embed code so that the screen reader will work properly. I'll show you in a minute a different way of doing these comprehension questions where you can actually click through in a box, but that may cause some accessibility issues. So the other way is this gap fill. So I used it as these are my words, and then the student reads the question and they choose the correct word. I'm not even paying attention, so I don't know if this is correct, but then it says whether it's right or not. And the same thing, you can show the solutions, and I think I've actually got that blocked so students can't just show the solutions automatically, and then you can retry it. So that's one way that I use it. Another way is I was talking about, specific questions. So this is another formatting of that. So they have, for the pronunciation class, what is the last sound in the word slices? It's the as, it's not the z or s, so you have to click on this and then check it. And then here you can click the arrow to get to the next one. This one actually might have some accessibility issues because I'm not sure if a screen reader can read this. Another thing that is pretty cool about H5P is that you can actually embed these activities directly into your Canvas course. So for example, if you click on, if you go to the bottom of this page, you see here it says embed, and then you have to go to the top and there's something you can copy here. Let me see if it'll work. Need to make sure that I copy the whole thing. Oh, it's not working for me right now.
Try Control A in the when you select that.
Thank you.
In that field, it should select all.
Control A. No, it's not working. At any rate, this is. Let me try it with another one and see if this works.
To double click, like fast.
Try triple click actually.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you can embed these activities directly into your Canvas course. So I'll show you how to do that as well. This is a page that I've created in one of my Canvas courses. And if you go into edit, you need to click on this little button down here so that you get into the computer code, and then you can copy and paste the code for the activity. And then you'll see it actually shows up directly in your Canvas course, and the students can interact with it the same way that they would on on another page. And this is open to anyone, not just me, because I have editing rights. This is an OER textbook. So if you, and by the way, my link to my textbook is in the slides that you received the link for today. So if you wanted to go through, if you want to go into my textbook and look through it, and then you found an activity that you liked, you could just click on that embed code, or sorry, this little embed thing here, and you could copy and paste that activity directly into your Canvas course without even having editing privileges for my textbook. And I know that that's been really useful because some of my colleagues who are using this pronunciation textbook have been able to do that with their Canvas courses. So that is pretty much all that I wanted to say. I mean, this is just a cool interactive thing. It's one part of a greater textbook. There are some other, listening activities, and there's projects as well. But this is really good. I think H5P, from my perspective, is really good for students working on individual practice, sort of detailed, simple types of things before they move on to more complex ideas and using the material in more complex ways in sort of real world situations. So I like to use it for, grammar, vocabulary review, pronunciation rules, things like that. So that's pretty much all that I had about mine. I don't know if you want me to answer questions now, or we can move on to the next person.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I realize you do have to leave a bit early today, so but we do have a bit of time. So perhaps if anybody does have questions for Brittany before she takes away, please feel free to throw those questions into the chat or to turn on your mic and ask away.
Yeah, and I went through that kind of quickly. So if you want me to go back and go over something a little bit more slowly, I do have a little bit of time. So
I have a quick question.
Of course.
Thanks for that. When you embed it directly onto Canvas, does the reader still work?
And this is, I'm still learning about accessibility things. My guess would be that if the reader will work on, or like an accessibility reader will work on LibreTexts, it will work in Canvas, but I would need to double check that with
Okay.
you know, accessibility people. And a good thing to do is just, you could try embedding it and talk to your accessibility people at your campus. There are usually some kind of workaround. Another way to kind of work around is that you can have, you can offer it as an activity, but it's not required. You can also, like in some cases, I've typed up all of the questions so that it is readable, and then they can do the interactive portion. Or another way that you can do that, what was the other thing that I was going to say about that? Oh, in Canvas, it's a little bit more time intensive, but a lot of times we'll just use these activities for sort of optional practice, and then actually give students a Canvas quiz that's required.
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Currently, my name is Susie. I'm currently using OpenStax right now and considering using this particular open educational resource for the next semester. I was just wondering, you mentioned something about these activities are available in the book. Is it possible for you to show exactly, you know, a similar activity? I understand how to embed it, but how does it look in the textbook, I'm wondering?
Sorry. So just to clarify, are you interested in using my pronunciation book, or you're interested in using H5P? What are you asking about?
Well, I'm using OpenStax Open Educational Resource right now, not the LibreTexts. And so I'm not familiar with, you know, how the organization of these books. I'm just trying to figure out the source of the activity that you just put into Canvas.
Right. So let's see, where's the best place to go? I can show you. So for example, you can search in bookshelves for different books that you want to use. And then like mine is in languages under ESL. And also it depends on what school you're in, like if you're in humanities or sciences. And then if you click on the link, so this is the thumbnail for my textbook. And if you go into here, I don't know if there's a way to differentiate between finding LibreTexts books that have H5P and the ones that don't. That might be a search function that could be added if it doesn't exist already. But if I go into this, like if I were to show you how I edited a page, let's see. So in order to edit a section, this is what it looks like in here. And I think maybe somebody else is going to get into the nitty gritty of how to, you are going to get into exactly how to add this into a LibreText book a little bit later. I think someone's going to give you instructions on that. But you know, I don't want to delete this or anything, but I think that there is, you need to have the code here. And it's been a really long time since I did this. So that will explain to you in more detail how to do that. But you can see here, I've got like a header, I've got my text, and then I've embedded this H5P activity right here. So does that answer your question for right now?
Yes, sort of. Maybe I just need to wait a little bit longer and see if, more of the question is answered, but thank you.
Yeah, I think there's actually going to be a practical section of this where they show you exactly how to do it, and you'll get to play around with it a little bit later.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. Delmar, who's not really Delmar, just said we do have a hands-on activity in a bit. Okay, and I think that there was maybe another question in the chat. Yeah, how do you start to create an activity? Yeah, that you're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for me? Okay. All right, well, if you guys, I'll be here for another 5 minutes if you want to private message me in the chat if you think of something else. But I think we're ready to move on. I hope that was helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brittany. Maybe it makes sense to throw your contact info into the chat just in case anybody wants to contact you offline.
Sure.
Yeah, and some of those questions that did come up, we are going to have a more hands-on session afterwards. We'll go through the steps of creating an account, creating content, embedding that content in our textbooks or in our LMS. But before we get into that, our next panelist here is Dr. Cristina Moon. Cristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Brittany. I think her presentation made it easier to follow since she answered some of the things that I was going to show. I don't think we need to spend too much time. You can read my bio on your own, but I do want to point out that I have one of my co-authors here too, Alejandro Lee, but our team wrote this Entrada Libre, which is a grammar manual for second-year Spanish. It's been used since 2020, and we have had a lot of fun creating it and a lot of challenges. We have learned a lot from it, but it is, if you go to the next slide, it's a screenshot of the actual manual. It's in LibreTexts. We created it. It has 8 chapters, and each of the chapters have 3 grammar units. And I can show you later how it actually looks. But the next slide, if you can go, thank you. So this is how it looks in LibreTexts. We have we start each of the grammar units with a reading that we worked on writing with the source, the original source, which was usually an article in a newspaper or a magazine. And it follows with a grammar explanation, and then it follows with the H5P activities. We decided to put all the H5P activities all at the end because we realized that and this is kind of out of our control, that the fact that H5P creates a frame within the page that makes it very difficult for printing. So it splits the screen. As you know, if you have worked with LibreTexts, you can go and make it into a PDF and have it printed. But if you have H5P activities in the middle of the page, that page gets kind of broken in the middle of it. So we decided to put it all at the end with the hope that eventually we'll either separate it or we'll make it easier for printing later on. So as of now, we have them all at the end. We had, like Brittany pointed out, we worked with the activities in H5P that had met the accessibility guidelines, which included the multiple choice and then pretty much the fill in the blanks. And we stuck with those. Since then, they have, LibreTexts has worked a lot on creating workarounds. So there might be a way to go around and not fixing it, but at least find other ways to use the drag and drop, the fun activities that H5P offers, and use it within Adapt, where you could actually give students that need those accommodations the accessible version of the activity that you want. But for our textbooks, pretty much all our H5P activities, we stuck with the, fill in the blanks and multiple choice. So next. Yeah, so this is how it looks once you import it as a common cartridge into your LMS. And so we use Canvas here. So the one on the left side, that's how it shows. Remember, each of the chapters will come out as a module, and each of the sections will come out as a page link. And what's great about it is that once in Canvas, you can move things around. So if you don't want Presente del Indicativo to be on chapter 1, you can drag it and move it in chapter 2 if you want. So it's, the same way that you manage your modules in Canvas, you can do the same thing. So once you bring it, you can do whatever you want in there. And then once you click on it, that's this middle image. That's how it looks. That's the grammar page. And then, which is, pretty much, it's basically a link to the original LibreTexts page. And then at the bottom of it, you'll find the H5P activities, like I showed you before. And then the next slide, it's actually what Brittany demonstrated, the fact that you can embed. So if, for example, I don't care about the grammar explanation, I just want the H5P activities for students to practice. And you can actually embed, get the embed code that Brittany showed, and then paste it into your Canvas page. And it will look exactly the same way that it looks on the actual Canvas H5P page. The top part, I did say these activities are optional, and that's I use them for students that want more practice. So that part, it's the text that you add in Canvas. So that's all I had. I don't know. Brittany did a great job with explaining the stuff on how to embed. But Yasin/Delmar included the link to Entrada Libre if you want to go check it out. And I'm sure, Yasin, you're going to show how to access the all the H5P activities with the library collection and stuff like that, where if you are just interested in looking for the H5P activities and not the textbook, you can just go to the LibreStudio and search for H5P activities, the 7,000 that are there as of now, and just choose and embed those activities to wherever you want to take it to.
Certainly, yeah, that is going to be part of the hands-on exercise that we'll do in a bit. Thank you so much, Cristina. Any questions for Cristina before we move on here?
I have the same question. It's Begonia. I have the same question as...
No, Begonia.
I know.
Begonia is my friend from my college. So
we know each other a little bit. But anyway, I have the same question as I had previously. How is the accessibility? Is it better using it through LibreTexts, or does something get lost when you put it into Canvas?
It should be, sorry, go ahead.
I don't think it gets lost. I think the issue that we had, it was with the actual source. It was the H5P, not necessarily embedding it, whether it's in because the embedding is the same thing, whether it's embedded in LibreTexts or in Canvas, it's somewhere there. But the actual thing is the H5P activity, which had the accessibility issues. One thing that Brittany mentioned was, for example, as you can see on my screenshot right there, this is a course presentation, meaning that it has more than one slide. So for accessibility purpose and also for printing, right? It would only show you what's there. And so unless you know to click on, go to the next slide, kind of like if you're doing a PowerPoint, you wouldn't know that this is the only page that you will see. You wouldn't know that there is another set of activities on the next click. So those are the things that you definitely want to consider when you are building activities in H5P. If your plan is to be very much, like secure that you are following accessibility guidelines and that you are going to build let's say a homework system, don't put them in course presentation mode. Have them be separate activities where you could actually build them, hopefully in Adapt, where that part could be resolved. I'm sure, Yasin, you can go into more of that, but yeah, so think about those things when you are, creating those activities.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shelley, for sharing the accessibility, the H5P accessibility documentation from the developers of H5P themselves, Yubel. That list of accessibility is, to be completely honest, a bit of a debated list, and really the best advice that that I can give you, perhaps, is that for sure there's going to be an accessibility specialist in your organization. Contact them, make sure that you're actually following your organization's standards and guidelines. But yeah, thank you so much, Cristina. If there's no other questions, I'll just give it another couple of seconds here if anybody wants to ask anything. Oh, thank you, Alejandro, for sharing those resources as well. Accessibility obviously is a big issue for us at LibreTexts regarding H5P. We have a lot of initiatives on the kind of on the go regarding trying to make at least some notifications and some guidelines on how to address accessibility in H5P. I'll discuss those a little bit further as we kind of get into our hands-on workshop. But those are some nice resources by Nicholas, who is an accessibility expert who's with the ASCCC, who's helped us with the accessibility on H5P significantly. So with that, our next panelist is Dr. Stefanie Leacock. So Stefanie, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for asking me to be up here with these wonderful colleagues. I always marvel at everything that everyone is doing in LibreTexts and on H5P. So I will try not to be redundant, but just give you some snapshots of what I have going on. I teach biology at University of Arkansas, Little Rock, and I'm using LibreTexts, or I started using LibreTexts for my genetics class. And so I'm going to, this will stop other screen sharing. Yes, I'll continue. So I have some tabs that I opened to show you. So this is a work in progress, and I've been using it for 2 semesters now. I don't teach this class in the spring, but I teach it in the fall. And so my textbook links in here in LibreTexts, and I thought I would just show a couple sections. So this is an example from a section of chapter 1 in my book. And like Brittany and Cristina, I have some embedded questions. So things I want students to watch, things I want them to read, and then some questions with H5P embedded in my text. And I think Brittany said, you know, she wanted them to learn things, you know, and get ready. And I also think that using the information in real time is really helpful for my students. So they can read like, oh gosh, all these steps of this section is DNA replication, all these steps, all these words, all these proteins. And so what I want them to do is to pause and think about what they're learning and answer a question about it. And this is obviously not graded, but it provides those stopping points for them to use knowledge in real time and hopefully go back if they don't get the question right and say like, okay, I missed something there. What was important to her? And again, I think this ties into my primary motivation for adopting LibreTexts for this class is to have a book focused on what I'm asking them to learn, not a textbook that's so comprehensive that has everything that anyone could ever ask them to learn. So this page, for example, just has, I think there's one more question down here at the bottom that's again asking them to use information and make a prediction. So that is an example of one of my sections. And let me show, oh, I had that one open over there. Sorry about that. If I go, and now my Zoom is in the way of my movement. I was going to give a similar example of this one, which Cristina just kind of showed us a screenshot of one that's a quiz kind of set. And so here, I loved these questions that I wrote because they kind of went together and they made a student think about something in multiple ways. But again, I kind of did this before I knew about some accessibility issues. And so this one is where there's several different questions and you have to click through. So again, that might not be the best option for all things, but I started before I knew all things. So sometimes that happens. And those are some things we might want to reframe. I think one thing that I have going on that I'm really excited about is if I go back to my main page and see my chapter 1 table of contents again, I am lucky enough to have a really fantastic student who approached me about an independent study project. And so he has been, and he's on here today, Ahad Nadeem, it's his name. And he has, and I have messed around with his page a little bit. So if whatever looks bad is my fault, not his. But he has been going through, he took my class in the fall, used H5P in LibreTexts, and decided that he thought that more questions would be useful for future students. I mean, if that isn't like the most altruistic student you've ever heard in your life. So he has created so many questions and put them into this review practice section. Again, there may be some that have accessibility issues and we're kind of just dealing with that. None of this is graded, it's all just for practice. And so he's designed some really cool drag and drop questions dealing with different characteristics of DNA and different examples. So I just wanted to highlight that as maybe something a little bit unique, that this is a project where students can have an active role in developing things to help their peers in the future. And then the last thing I was going to show, if my tab will go to the right place. This is, I know that we'll start working in H5P Studio in a little bit, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what it looks like. So this is when I'm logged into LibreStudio, and it says my H5P. So this is basically all the questions that I have put in here. So I can see any of my questions. Just today, preparing for this, I found an error in one of my questions. And so, for example, I could go in and I found a question that the correct answer hadn't been marked. So this is where it would be designed. And I just went in and edited it, marked the correct answer, resaved it, and now it was fixed. So it was, again, all of this is a work in progress. So that's what it would look like. You can also, so for example, if you go to browse subjects, you can see that some of the most recent questions were the ones created by my student right here. So they're in the biology library. So if you're wanting to look for specific questions, you can start by looking in your particular subject. People have mentioned Adapt, which is the sort of graded version of that. Or using H5P in a gradable platform. I tried that a little bit in the fall, but it was just getting started and I had a lot of stumbles along the way in Adapt, but it's a similar type of thing. You embed the questions and then students will see them, say, as their homework. So I have a question set that they would answer for homework. Again, it was in early stages when I started using this last September. So I'm not definitely an expert, but it is possible in the long run that you can actually use your questions in a graded platform. Does that sound like a reasonable stopping point?
Thank you so much, Stefanie. That was wonderful. You know, we had a chance to hear about, you know, formative assessment, summative assessment, and of course, That's something we don't get to talk about very often, which is student-authored assessment. And before I open up to, I guess, the rest of the folks for questions, I just had a question for Ahad. During that process of actually creating those assessments, would you say that it was a good chance to kind of test your skills and your learning of the material and your mastery of the material, essentially?
Yes, definitely. It helped me reinforce the material because I wanted to make questions where you're testing a concept and you have some distractors, some things that are similar but are not right. And so I had to really think about the content on a deeper level to make those type of more critical thinking questions. And so it was really helpful for me to make these questions. It's normally how I study, is making questions anyway. So I really enjoyed that.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear that. That's fantastic. Any other questions for Stefanie or Ahad or the rest of our panelists?
So if I understand correctly, H5P is a good place to have questions, but there's nothing linked to the gradebook. If you want to link to the gradebook, then you use Adapt. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Exactly what it is.
I had a question. Hi, this is Lyra. So a couple of you mentioned the questions when they print on the page that, it looks really weird. So when you put them like all at the end and do people print that out, or do you just not choose to print the sections that have questions at the very end, like an appendix?
We didn't do that for our project, but I know of another project that, because of the printing issue, and that was because they wanted that option to really work for the students. If you don't care, if you just want the students to be looking at the electronic version, right? Because the problem is, once you print, you lose the actual interactiveness of the H5P, right? It just becomes a print activity where, yes, student could mark, the multiple choice, you can do the fill in the blanks, but there is no like feedback right away. It will tell you got it right or wrong. So you're basically changing that whole opportunity of making it interactive. But there was another team that what they decided to do was to put all those H5P activities, in our case, we put them at the end of the page. They put it in a separate page in LibreTexts. So the first page basically was the grammar, whatever, all that presentation. So if you want to print that, it's all good, it's all in there. And then all the activities will be on a separate page. So it eliminates the need of having, to separate the PDF or anything like that. And I know that Delmar was looking into this iframe situation. That is what was breaking the activity into like parts and then missing parts too. So yeah, we had to weigh the facts. Same thing with Stefanie and Brittany. We wanted to have the activities following it, but then we have to think about the actual practicality of it. Some actually, yeah. So Yasin, some activities are okay. It's some weird, I think, is where the page break happens. I don't know, Stefanie, have you looked at where it breaks?
Yeah, so I honestly haven't. I find that students say they want things printed, but in actuality, they don't. I mean, that's been my experience with other ebooks and my LibreTexts. Students are like, what about a print copy? And then I'm like, oh, did anyone order the print copy? And they're like, no. So I just think that they think that they want that, but in my school, I don't find students use that much. And I agree with Cristina. I also provide them other opportunities for doing homework on paper, right? This is not the only thing that they do to practice. And so to me, like having H5P printed is just not the main use of what we're using that for.
I agree. I mean, what do you
Okay.
think? Ahad is here. What do you think? It's great to have a student. I think it's to have that perspective. We think that that's what they need, but sometimes that's not what they want. So I don't know.
Yeah, from my experience, most people, if there's an online textbook, no one is really printing. Because one of the advantages of an online textbook is that if it changes and you printed out something, then you don't have that change. So most people I know use it on their laptop or tablet.
Yeah, that's exactly what we thought too, as we move forward. So it is, if your goal is to have it printed, then I would definitely separate it. And then you wouldn't need an H5P activity if you need to print. Right. You could just do a fill in the blanks or and just type it up and skip the process of creating H5P activities.
I don't know if you're looking for me in the chemistry. I'm in the biology library.
Sorry, I just realized I was in chemistry.
Please don't put me in chemistry.
It's all the same thing.
If someone gives me a Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, I'll cry.
It's all the same magic to me.
Thank you so much for answering that.
Yeah, I was just trying to demonstrate what it looks like on print. So here we have an H5P item on this page. If we were to take a look at what the PDF export of this page looks like, so with LibreTexts we have PDF exports. You'll notice with that H5P inline in that page, where was it?
It got skipped, I think. It
got skipped, yeah. Most likely what we're doing is we're ignoring wherever this comes up, we're just ignoring it completely on the PDF. What we will do in the future is have a QR code like this, because you'll notice video, we have that same issue, right? A video on a PDF or in a print version is not useful to anybody, but we want that video to be accessible in some sort of way. So to having a QR code that lets the student pop up that video in a logical way, in an easy manner, is probably what we want to do also with the H5P or other activities. So that's probably what the future will look like in terms of H5P within the page itself. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Stefanie.
You're welcome.
What we're going to get into next here, we'll just start the slideshow back up. Is we're going to actually get a hands-on. We're going to create some H5P. We're going to take that. Actually, we have an agenda here. Our goals, we're going to first create some H5P. Specifically, we're going to create a quiz. We're going to add license to it. If you're not familiar with OER, one of the kind of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the most important parts of creating open content or open educational resources is adding a license to it, so it makes it easier for other people to use. We'll also add some more metadata, including the subject, some tags, and so on, so we can easily make our content discoverable. We'll improve our quiz by adding some feedback for the learner, so they can get immediate feedback on their learning. And we'll also add that quiz that we build into the library so other instructors can find it. We'll also add it to our profile so that we can kind of build a bit of a portfolio of our resources. So with that, our first step is we're going to go to studio.libretext.org. Again, I'll throw that link into the chat. Feel free to follow along. Once we get to this page, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Once we get to this page, we want to find the register button at the very top if you don't have an account just yet. Click on the register button. Fill out your name, your organization, your email address, and the registration code that you're going to use to register today is OE Week 2022, just like that in the chat. And go ahead and create a new account. You'll have to go and verify your account. It will send you an email. Sorry, you'll have to verify your email, I should say. So you'll get an email. It will have a link. Click on that link, and then from there you should be able to set a password and start creating content. I'm going to give folks a few seconds here, but what I'll do just to kind of catch up and go through that process, But what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and I'll log in here with my account. I'll give folks a few seconds here just to catch up in the event that you are following along. Feel free to, again, throw any issues that you may have into the chat. I'll do my best to kind of get you through any hurdles that you encounter. I'm hoping everybody's been able to log in at this point. Once we're logged in, we'll be transported to our dashboard, or sorry, our profile. If we click on the author menu here, we'll see that we have my H5P as an option, my collections, my bookmarks, my profile, my settings. The page that we're on right now is my profile. Your profile is a public profile, so even non-logged in users will be able to see your profile and see any content that you've shared in your profile. The idea is this is kind of like a LinkedIn, but for your H5P content. If we want to see our content that we've created, we can go into the author menu and click on my H5P. And from here, we'll see all the H5P that we have created. We can use the search filter here to search through our H5P and edit and bookmark our own H5P in here. Really quickly, just the other parts of the studio. The homepage or the browse all section. This lets us browse the over 7,000 H5P resources that are shared openly within Studio. These are H5P created by other users such as Ahad, Stefanie, and all our panelists, obviously. And of course, over 300 educators have an account on LibreStudio, and so there's quite a few people creating content on here. If we want to search by subject, so I'm only interested in perhaps biology, we can filter the 7,000 results by subject. We can filter by specific tags. We'll get into what tags are very shortly. We can look for specific authors. So in this case, if I just want to see Brittany's work, I can just type in her name exactly as it shows up and hit search. And that'll give me all of the open content that Brittany has shared. I can also filter by keywords or by content type. So perhaps I'm looking for, specifically, I'm looking for maybe questions or quizzes in the, and Brittany does language, so in the language section. So if I was to do this search, I'm searching for the language in the language domain for any content authored by Brittany that is a question set, and I can take a look at each of the items that have been returned here. I can take a quick preview of the content. If I just click on this arrow button, I'll open up what's referred to as a modal, and I can see this resource, what it looks like. I even have the option to reuse it or embed it just from here if I like what I see. Or I can click on view details and see the specific details that for that H5P resource. I can also bookmark certain content. I'm just going to go ahead and bookmark a few of the resources that are here, and we'll get into what bookmarking resources helps us do in the future. So anyway, that's essentially the, I guess, the various pages that you may see. Oh, one page I did forget to actually click on. If we just go to an H5P page, if we click on the title of the H5P, we'll see the H5P on the left-hand side, an option to bookmark or remove from our bookmarks if we've already bookmarked it. And then on the right-hand side, we'll see all the metadata related to this H5P, such as the title, what subject it's a part of, if there's a license attributed with it, what type of content it is, when it was created, when it was updated, is it shared in the library, what are some of the tags, what is the accessibility guidance regarding this content type, how many times has it been bookmarked, what is the ID, and who the author is. If we were to click on the author's name, we would, again, be taken to their profile. From here, we can, if the author has enabled it, we can contact the author if we want to have a chat with them regarding any of the H5P they've created. We did talk about accessibility quite significantly, so this button is going to be increasingly important. If you come across an H5P item and you're not sure what the accessibility guidance or standards are for this content type, you can always click on the accessibility button at the bottom here. And what this will do is it'll pull up information about that specific content type, the quiz question set in this case, and give you some important pointers on what is accessible, what is not accessible about this specific content type, including, you know, where the accessibility fails and what some workarounds that you may need to implement are in order to use this activity in your own work. So for this activity, the question set or the quiz, you'll notice that it is marked as usable with workarounds. By the way, this is an accessibility expert that's essentially gone through all the content types for us and given us some feedback in terms of how they could be used in an accessible manner. So it's been marked as usable with workarounds, and here's the description. It does say that the activity may be more useful if these things are met. And some of these are just tasks that you as the instructor should perhaps consider. I won't go into further information about that, but you'll notice that there are essentially 3 classes of accessibility, and they're denoted by color. Yellow means you should probably consider not using it. Red means you should not use it at all. And green means it's good to go, but perhaps still consider some of the consider building alternatives. And I don't know if I'll be able to actually pull up. I believe multiple choice is, it's also yellow. And I think it's been brought up a few times. Most of the content types in H5P, they are they don't meet the rigorous accessibility standards of WCAG or 508 or AODA if you're in Canada, or depending on what standards your organization goes for. So thank you, Cristina. I'm going to open up this URL. So the URL that Cristina shared in the chat, this is where you can see all the different, you can see how it was tested, and then you can see the different levels of testing and which content types are fall into which category of accessibility. I definitely recommend you taking a look at this page before you start to create any specific content type that especially if accessibility is a major issue, which obviously it is in all cases, pretty much. So that's kind of the interface. We talked about the different ways you can navigate certain things. But what we're really interested in, if we go back into our slideshow here, is we want to create a quiz. So with that, what we're going to do is once we're logged in, we're going to find this new H5P button. We're going to go ahead and click on that. From here, we have a right-hand panel, which we'll ignore for now, and a left-hand panel, which is the H5P editor. From the H5P editor, you'll notice that we have a create content and an upload button or tab, if you will. We're just going to live on the create content section for now. And we said that we wanted to create a quiz, and specifically what we want to do is we want to create a multiple choice question. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to search. I can use the search to filter through the list. You'll notice that there are 52 different content types. If you wanted to explore some of these other content types before kind of making a choice of what you wanted to build, you can always hit the details button. And from here, you'll see some screenshots. You can open up the content demo. This will take you to another site. You can see how you might want to use this content type. And of course, you know, it is encouraged that you experiment with the various content types to find one that fits your specific use case. So for us, we did say we want multiple choice. I'm going to click on multiple choice. From here, the first thing we want to do is give our multiple choice a title. I'm just going to call this OE week question 1, if I can spell. And I guess my question will be is, what? I'm not very creative when it comes to questions, obviously. But let's just consider, whatever question you want to add in here, please feel free to go ahead and do that. After we type in our question, we start to provide some options for the student. So these are going to be the multiple options that are available in our question. We'll pick the right answer. You'll notice that we have an option to set that as the correct answer. We'll add another option here. You'll notice that we can also set this as the correct option. So we can have multiple correct options. Obviously, that might break certain design elements. It's a comment from Stefanie. Yeah, one thing I skipped over real quick, but I recommend as well, as Stefanie recommends here, is to check out the tutorial and the example pages. If we click on tutorial, this will actually take us to a page for that content type that describes how to best use it, what the different fields mean, and what impact that they have. So if you're ever looking at a content type and you're curious how best to use it, that would be the one-stop place to go check out as a tutorial. Thank you for reminding me of that. Anyway, so we're going to continue on here. We have our question. We have 2 options. We're going to add another option. And we'll add a 4th option, just so we have a total of 4 options. We'll just leave it at that for now. That's the H5P portion of it, and we'll edit this content type again, just so we can kind of see the editing process once we've created the content. Before we can save this H5P, we have to also select the subject. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to choose math in this case. It is also recommended that you start to organize your content by tags. Tags can be specific to your use case. So this can be, for instance, your course code, maybe your faculty code or something like that. I'm going to just type in OE week 22, just so this is something I've created during OE week, and I want any content that I create with OE week with this tag to be kind of searchable. So that's what tags essentially let us do. And we're also going to go ahead and include this in our profile. Once we scroll down on the right-hand panel here, you see the option to include in our profile. We can keep it private, which basically means only logged in users will be able to see it. But we're not going to check that right now. And we're going to make sure to include it in the library. The library is that browse all section where you can search and filter for various H5P. So just like that, we're going to go ahead and hit save. We'll ignore the errors for whatever reason that's popping up. And now we've created an H5P question, a multiple choice question that has 4 options. Here's the page info, right? So we have all the metadata that we've added so far. You'll notice that it is possible to download this H5P or copy it or embed it in various places. Cristina adds into the chat, you can also add tips and feedback for each answer option. Absolutely. And so we'll just go ahead and do that next. And I just wanted to demonstrate real quick, it's fairly simple to start creating H5P. It starts to become a little bit more complex when you want to do, take your H5P to the next level, if you will. But it doesn't really get much more difficult than this. It's just a few more buttons, a few more clicks, if you will. And so one of the most important things that we need to do with our content, I'm just going to go ahead and find the edit resource button at the bottom of the right-hand panel here and hit that button. From here, I'm just going to, the first and most important thing that we want to change about our H5P is we want to hit this metadata button. By clicking on this button, we're presented with a form to add sharing and license info. And this is critical if we want our resources to be openly shareable, openly remixable. In order to make it remixable in an easy way, we should probably select a license, an open license. Obviously, it's a whole other discussion to talk about Creative Commons and licensing and things of that nature. So I'll just leave that for your own kind of research. But the most open license you can use is attribution by Creative Commons. We're just going to go ahead and do CC BY. We're going to add our name here just so that our name follows this content whenever it gets reused. And just with that, by leaving the title as is, by selecting a license and adding our name as an author, we're going to go ahead and hit the Save Metadata button. And now that information is essentially encapsulated within the H5P itself. And so anytime somebody reuses it or views it, they'll be able to see that information about the author, which is critical for open education. Another point that Cristina made here is that you'll notice underneath each of the options, we have the ability to create, to add tips and feedback. And what this does is we can add feedback to the user, to the student, if they select an answer or if they don't select an answer. So let's say, for instance, that they selected this option. It's the incorrect option for this question. What I could do as the instructor is tell the student that reread section 3 in chapter 3, right? And I can even provide a link, obviously, see if I can just do it here. I'll add google.com, but this is probably, my textbook or something like that. And I would point them to go and reread chapter 3 so that they can kind of have a refresher if they answered 3. Obviously, this can get very, you can have all sorts of feedback in here. If they were to, whoops, I put it into the wrong section. Not if it's not selected. I wanted, if they select the incorrect answer, send them to reread chapter 3. But you get the idea, right? Basically, I can have real-time feedback directly in this question itself. And we'll just leave it at that. It gets even more deeper, but we'll just leave it at that for now. And what we'll notice here is if, as the user, as the student, if I choose the wrong answer and I hit check, you'll notice now I see that that feedback immediately in the content. Sorry, in the activity itself. Any questions before I kind of move on to the next section? Great. So what we're going to do next is, so what we've done is we created a quiz. We added a license to make it more open. We added metadata. So we selected the subject. We added some tags. We improved our quiz with feedback. And we added it to the library and the profile. Let's actually demonstrate that. So if we go back into the library, you'll notice that the top question here is going to be this OE Week question 1, which I've authored just a minute ago. And so anybody browsing the library will be able to see this resource, will be able to bookmark it, will be able to view the resource and download it or embed it in their own course. Obviously, we've built a very simple resource here, but most of the resources that you're going to find are super useful. They're actually contextually useful in your course design. So our next step here, now that we have a quiz, is we're going to build something a little bit more, a bit larger in terms of scope. We're going to build a presentation, a course presentation it's referred to. We're going to copy our quiz. So we're going to also not just create a new content type, but we're going to remix an existing content type. We're going to find, we're going to use the bookmarking and be able to browse different resources. And we're going to add this presentation that we build into a textbook and into our LMS. So it's a little bit more work, but let's get into it. So our first step is we want to create a new H5P. And for this example, we're going to create a course presentation. And of course, if this is the first time you're creating a presentation in H5P, it is recommended that you take a look at the examples and the tutorial just to kind of get your bearings. But what we're going to start doing here, because we're now used to it, we're H5P professionals, the very first thing we're going to do is hit the metadata button. We'll add our title information here. We'll add our open license information here, and we'll add our author information here. Again, because we've gotten so good at this, that's the first thing that we do now. Once we start to build out the H5P itself, you'll notice that when you're building presentations, the interface is a little bit different. You have this, let's call it a canvas, where you can add text, links, images, a whole slew of stuff here, and a whole lot more stuff that you can just add into your canvas of slides here. What I like to do, just to make my life easier, is I'll hit this button with an enter full screen button whenever I'm building things like course presentations, because it gives me just a little bit more real estate, screen real estate, when creating content. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that button. And now it just kind of removes all the clutter around my screen. And I have my panel here where I can start to add content. We're going to build a very basic slide deck here. We'll just call this OE Week slide deck example. I'm just adding some text, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all that text and I'm going to set that as a heading. You'll notice that I also have the option to set different colors and set a background color for the text. I'm going to ignore all that. It's a bit of a it could snowball into accessibility issues, so I'm not going to go there. But once we hit done, you'll notice that that text is added to our canvas, and then we can just kind of drag and drop it around to where we think we want that text to go. And so just directly underneath that text, I'm going to add some more text. I have my handy dandy lorem ipsum generator. So I'm just going to add some lorem ipsum here. And again, I've added my text. There's a done button at the bottom here. I'm going to hit done. I'm going to drag that to where I would like. And that's really all there is to it. Whoops. And one last thing I'll do is I'll just add an image here. So I hit the image button. I'm going to hit the add button here. I'll select an image, something I can use. Perhaps it's going to be this LibreTexts logo. You'll notice that I have the option to add alternative text, which you should absolutely be doing. And we'll ignore some of the other kind of options here, but we'll just hit done. We'll just, again, drag that to where we like. We can resize it. And you'll notice that any of this content, these blocks here, we can actually resize these as well so that they are the shape and the size that we want for our presentation. And so there's my first slide. You notice I'm on slide 1 of 1. And what I can do is here, I can add new slides. I can clone this slide or make a copy of this slide, modify the slide background, and move reorder slides by moving them left or right, or I can delete the slide. What I'm going to do is, because I'm a little bit lazy, is I'll just clone this slide and I'll delete some of these elements. You'll notice now I have slide 2 of 2. If I go back here, I have, I'm on slide 1, now I'm on slide 2, and so on. And what I want to do here in my design is I want to include some of these interactive assessments. So you'll notice that I can add fill in the blanks, a single choice question set, multiple choice question, true or false questions, drag and drop. I can add a summary, drag the words, a dialogue card, like quite a few different types of content that I can add in here. And what we'll do is we'll look for the multiple choice question that we just created. We'll add that in here. That's going to be our goal. So instead of clicking on multiple choice and then recreating my multiple choice question, I'm actually going to cancel this. I'm going to hit the delete button here because I don't want that multiple choice. And I'm going to just go ahead and proceed to save this presentation in its current state, right, with these two slides, and then go and find the H5P that I want to that I've created as a multiple choice question and paste it into here. What I need to do here before I can hit save is just select a subject. I'll again tag this as OE week. I'll choose to display this in my profile and in the library, and I'll go ahead and hit save. Mind the errors again. I'm not sure why that's happening. It's anytime that you want to do a live demo, that's when the errors show up. But anyway, here we are. So I've created my slide deck. It has 2 slides. All the information about the metadata is presented here as well. But what I want to do next is I want to bring in a multiple choice question in here. And so what I would do is I would go back into Browse All, or what I might do is I might go into my bookmarks if I bookmarked some content that I want to reuse afterwards. Or if it's my own H5P that I want to use in this content, what I would just do is just go into my H5P dashboard and find the content that I want to use. So in this case, I want to take this multiple choice question that I built earlier, and I want to use it in my H5P slideshow. All I'm going to do in this case is click on the reuse button, click on the copy content button, and now you'll notice that it gives me this notification that it's been copied to my clipboard. So what I can do is now I can go back into my H5P dashboard, find the presentation I was working on, go ahead and edit that presentation, go to the slide where I want my the thing that I've copied to show up, and just look for this paste button. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit the paste button. You'll notice that it just pastes that resource right in here. And so I can drag it around just like anything else, any other content type. And I can resize it so that it fits a little bit cleanly. And now that I have that entire resource. And again, if I double click on this resource, or if I just click on the resource and find the edit button, you'll notice that all the information about that resource, including the title, including the tips and feedback that we added, including also, and importantly, the metadata about who the author is and what the license is, all that was carried over. I can start to modify this content because it's now a remix. It's my own remix of it, if you will. But I'll just leave it as is. And if I go ahead and hit save on this resource here, again, ignore the errors. You'll notice that on slide 2, we have this circle now. We also have this summary. I don't know if that's visible in the zoom here. It doesn't let me zoom in any further. But you'll notice this circle is indicating that there's some sort of interaction here. And because we've added an interaction, we also have this summary. So now when my students are viewing this slide deck, they're going to be able to interact with this quiz and check their learning as they go. And regardless of how many interactions I have on any number of slides, a summary will also be presented to the students where they can see what scores they got on the various slides, on the various kind of interactive elements. And that's not all. So what we did was we created a presentation, and we just used our own resource. We copied it over. But what we can do, and then it's the beauty of H5P, is we can find. We have a question here from Iwa. Where can we see their responses in the slides? I'll get to that's a great question. I will get to that very shortly. So let's say that we wanted to find more, perhaps we were looking for more, we're in the mathematics. Actually, I think chemistry has a bit more content, so we'll stick to chemistry, and we're going to look for a question set. Actually, I believe it's called a single choice set, question set, maybe. We're going to look for question sets, and we'll see this. We have this quiz by Vincent Belford. We'll take a look at it. Maybe this fits exactly what we're looking for. You'll notice that there are 10 questions. And this is something that we want to use in our slide. Well, we can go through the same process. We can hit the reuse button. In this case, they've made it download as H5P. I guess I can't copy paste that. So that's the wrong content type. Pardon me for 1 second. We'll just look for a true and false, perhaps, question. Keep our lives a little bit simpler. So here's a question, a true and false question, authored by Loveleen. There's the question itself. Oh, and this doesn't have the copy. So perhaps, I know Bob is also. So here's, this is going to be the one, folks. This is a question by Bob Belford. We have the reuse button. It's not letting me copy it here either. That is very strange behavior. And what we'll do is we'll just look for any multiple choice was working, so let's perhaps stick to that. And perhaps this is the multiple choice question. Of course, Bob has disabled the copying feature.
You should look for Spanish.
Is it in? Okay. Yeah, sometimes authors, they like to lock it down so that, you know, it's not easy to copy. But we're going to look for probably the tag Spanish. And we'll check out some of the multiple choice here.
I have a quick question. What's the point of putting it here if the author doesn't allow you to copy it?
So some of the reasons that the authors have made it not copyable is because imagine you're using these questions in an exam or a quiz setting where the students' attempts are graded. And we have such a feature with the Adapt platform. And so instructors, they don't want students to be able to find the question very easily within this open infrastructure and learn what the answer is, because that kind of defeats the summative purpose, unfortunately. So some of the questions that we see shared openly, they're just for other instructors to try and kind of get a sense of how to use them, but they're blocked so the students also don't get the answer. Hope that makes sense. For whatever reason, it's not showing me the copy button anymore for anything. I'm not entirely sure what's happened. But I do promise you, you can find H5P, other H5P, and most of the time, it doesn't have to be your own, but you can copy it. In this case where it says download as H5P, so we're just going to go ahead and do that anyway. Here's a nice element by Stefanie. We're going to download this H5P. And that's what it's going to save as. So let's try and remember that, 3969. We've downloaded that H5P. Now when we're creating new H5P, we can just go ahead and upload that H5P that we just downloaded. And now we have a copy of that question or that resource that was built by, in this case, Stefanie. So if we go ahead and we save that, we have a version of this resource that, again, was initially created by Stefanie that we now can modify and make our own. So perhaps we like the first question, perhaps we like the second question, but it's this third question that we want to replace with something else. We can easily remix this content because, again, we now have the edit rights for it.
And also, just to make clear or clarify for myself as well as possibly everyone else, to like, if you wanted to just put the question on your own page, you don't have to go through that process.
Correct.
Like,
yes.
as long as you have the H5P ID on the bottom right there, you can put it into any script, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's two ways, and we'll get into that very shortly, two ways to include the H5P that you've created in Pages or in your LMS. What we're trying to do right now is essentially copy the content, the resource, into another H5P content type. So in this case, we have this presentation that we were building. And as far as presentations go, we can have multiple slides and multiple different sort of resources or content types within the slide itself as well. So if we just continue editing this resource, now that we've copied Stefanie's resource over, what we can do is we'll just go ahead and create a new slide after slide 2. Of course, it's not letting me paste that. But if it was a multiple choice or drag and drop or true or false question, we'd be able to paste it in here without any issue. And now we'd be using that question essentially within our within the slides. But to Stefanie's earlier question about do we really need to do this? Not necessarily. If we wanted to just reuse anybody else's work in our own books or in our own LMS, you'll notice that most of these questions have the embed button, or if we scroll down here, if you're using Adapt, they have the H5P ID button, or sorry, if you're using LibreText. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go in, and the first way we'll actually build this is, whoops, I'm just going to click on the embed button. And from here, we're going to go into a LibreTexts book. Just log into the biology book here. I'm going to go into my sandbox, and perhaps you're building it somewhere else. But in my sandbox, I have the option to, let's just discard the changes there, to add a new page or a new book. And what I'm going to do is there's essentially two ways to do this. One, I'm going to use the embed code first. So what I'll do is I'll hit the HTML button just like you would in the Canvas LMS, and then find a place where you can embed the iframe code, and then hit the visual button again so you can see that H5P visually and all the content visually. And so from here, if I was just to save this page, now I've included H5P in my page here. There it is, right? So this is H5P again, built by somebody else, user Nadim. You can see the license information here, and so on and so forth. And so this is how I would build H5P into my the LMS works in the same way. One other option that's specific to LibreText, if I was editing this page and I didn't want to worry about, I'm just going to delete that right now. I didn't want to worry about any of the, the view the HTML and copy paste the code. If I didn't want to worry about any of that, I have the option to click on the elements. From here, click on templates. Once the templates load, I have the option to scroll down and look for H5P. I'll insert the template. And from here, all I have to do is replace this 1 where it says ID with the ID of the H5P that I want to include. You'll notice that the ID for the H5P is on the right-hand panel there. So I'll just copy that ID back into my textbook. I'll replace that number 1 with the H5P ID, and I'll just go ahead and hit save. The added benefit of approaching it this way is that we get this really nice kind of heading in this box that surrounds the rest of the H5P activity itself as well. All right, I think that's in terms of what we want to do. So we want to create a course presentation. We want to copy the quiz that we built earlier into the slides. We want to find and bookmark other content. We want to add the quiz into our presentation, the metadata, share it, embed that presentation in the textbook. And I don't have access to my LMS at the moment, but as our other panelists kind of described, you can actually just use the embed code from H5P that we see here. You can just use the H5P embed code in your LMS, in your pages there, and it will show up exactly as it does right here. So before I kind of move on, is there any other questions? I'm just going to look at the chat here. We did have a question here from Susie. This presentation is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded to YouTube into LibreTexts' YouTube channel, which I'll just add the URL to here as well. Just looking through some of the other questions. Feel free to turn on your mic if you have any questions. This is kind of like the discussion part. Any questions that you have, feel free to throw them out there.
Yasin, did you post the blog? No, not the blog. The YouTube channel is not visible.
Whoops. Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
I think a previous person had asked a question about seeing their responses.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah. So seeing the responses, H5P, and we're going to ignore the adapt framework for now. H5P itself is essentially meant for formative assessment. So what that means is basically the questions that you're creating, the interactive elements that you're creating, they're meant for the student's self-practice and not for any sort of, let's call it gradebook integration or kind of insight on the instructor's part. That said, there is data that is collected. It's just not, because of various reasons, it's not something that we're displaying or making available at the moment. In order to make that data available, if you were to use Adapt to host your questions, your H5P questions, you would get feedback in terms of what your students are how they're using, or what the responses are essentially. So hopefully that answers your question. The idea of including these H5P resources in our textbooks or in our lessons, the idea is that it's self-practice for the student. So as a student, I may have read a previous passage that talked about DNA sequences that encode in proteins are called genes. It would have described what genes were. This is a self-check for me. So if I pick the right answer, pick the wrong answer, I'll get that immediate feedback, from the instructor, and I will either know that I need to continue reviewing, or I'm ready to kind of perhaps move on to the next, into the next section of the readings.
So Ahad wrote that recently, and we had talked about that feedback being especially important for true false because they have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. So we wanted to make sure that feedback would be specific.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is where that feedback is super important, right? It's like it's probably a terrible analogy, but you're over the student's shoulder and you're giving them that immediate feedback. You're at the table with them essentially, it's very difficult to do that in an LMS setting, right? And that's why we need tools like H5P to essentially allow us to do that. We have another question from Iwa. So Adapt is a separate platform to create activities. Yeah, so if we go to adapt.libretext.org, and I'll just share the URL. And in fact, we had another recording, recent recording during OE week regarding Adapt. Using Adapt, instructors can create quizzes. So here's Cristina's intermediate Spanish homework system, or homeworks assignments. I don't know what to call them within Adapt. Is there anything you want to mention about H5P and Adapt, Cristina or Stefanie?
So this is basically the pool of H5P activities that you saw. So it's not like you're creating new activities in Adapt. You're basically pulling in those activities that were in Studio that you have created, and they are coming in now as assignments. So if you think about it, like in Canvas quizzes, right? Your question bank. So this is where the question bank lies. And then you're going to create your quizzes, right? So the assignments that you'll be creating will be done in Adapt. So you will be pulling in. So if you click on the, actually, if you view the activities, you have all the sections that, I had from my OER, and each section would have, 5 or 6 activities. So I could take them all and just assign it as a bulk, but maybe I want to choose a few and make that an assignment for this week with the due date, point system, all that. So that is being done in Adapt. So I'm not making nothing, it's nothing new. So the same activity that you saw in the book and in LibreStudio are reappearing here, but now they are assignments with points. And then, Ewa was asking about, can I see the students' answers? And so that could be done here. So Stefanie, you have tried it. I haven't actually tested it out myself.
So yeah, so everything Cristina said is true. However, I would add that I thought I would do more, and that may have been a mistake. So for example, in genetics, I sometimes want my students to draw something or give me a diagram, do things that you would not do in H5P. And so I had created assignments that were combinations of some of my H5P created questions and some what I would call like free response questions, where because in Adapt, they could upload a file, they can upload a drawing or type in an answer, and that's not auto-graded. So the H5P questions, like Cristina just described, all that would be auto-graded. She doesn't have to go in and look at their responses. It just records it right or wrong and whatever point she's assigned. So I thought I would be clever. And what I learned is you can do both of those things, but you should not mix them into one assignment, because it gets confused about whether or not it's trying to auto grade the whole thing, or I need to go in and grade, their diagram or their, paragraph or whatever. So I learned a lot in the fall when I tried to use this. So I would say starting simpler is better than trying to do too much at once.
Oh, that's good to know. So the open-ended type of questions, because you can do recordings. So students could also submit recordings, which I am very open, obviously, for a language class, that students will come in and record their answers. So you're saying that those should be like a separate assignment, like a separate thing from the auto-graded ones.
Right. I think because, and I know that, it was really just in the early stages in the fall, and I know they're like updating settings and things all the time, which is one of the great things about, LibreTexts. You just send an email and they start working on your problem. But like, if you're going to do a recording and it's not going to grade automatically, then it is not going to grade any of the other questions automatically either. And so then my students could enter multiple answers, right? They could do it again and again. And so it just got very confusing. So I would keep it as its own thing.
Can you say that last sentence again? Because that doesn't sound right.
And the real Delmar is here.
There's 2 of you now.
Oh, that's right. So I've been typing in the chat and no one knows it was me. Okay. say this again that you're trying. So I routinely mix my assignments with open-ended and auto-graded.
Oh, well, so
and I've never had an issue with
Oh.
students not recognizing what they're supposed to do.
No,
That being said,
students recognize they're supposed to do, but for example, they could have re-answered a multiple choice question a bunch of different times because it wasn't.
if the multiple choice is auto-graded, then so. Yes, yes and no. Depends on if you're saying that you have everything open-ended, then of course you can constantly update it. But you have the ability in order to tell people for auto-graded questions, they can submit once, or they can submit 5 times, or you can have deductions off of them. This is something that's been around for a couple weeks now.
So this was this was like September.
Yeah. Okay. So you have the ability in order to dictate how many times you want them to submit, and per question, penalties and things like that, and such. So, okay.
So again, that's what I said. Like you contact them and they start addressing. So I had multiple conversations about why my settings weren't what I kind of wanted them to be, and so that was where we had.
Take a look at the new one. So
okay.
the San Bernardino people were pushing some aggressive restructuring of how you can handle some displaying and permissioning for auto-graded questions now.
That sounds great. Thank you.
And that applies across all technologies.
I've been waiting so I didn't have to go through when everything is all fixed and it has all the instructions and tutorial, then I'll join.
Well, now that Adapt has gotten pretty refined, so we're like the user experience, we like how things are organized, and you can do so. There's still some things that we're going to be modifying, and now it's comfortable enough for us to start readdressing the tutorials in order to be able to make them better reflect what it currently is than what it was last summer when the tutorials were written, and such. And that's, thankfully Eric and Yasin, or excuse me, Delmar, whoever he is has been addressing quite nicely. So anyways, I should step away because I actually should prepare my talk that I'm giving in 45 minutes. So I will let you guys enjoy your stuff. And this looks like it's quite an interesting conversation, and such. And Begonia, you're a nutritionist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Super Tracker alternative is going to be available on our infrastructure soon, just for your information. So if you want more information about that, let me know. Anyways, I'm going to go and I'll talk to you. Have fun, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Delmar number 2.
He'll be number 2, you'll be number 1.
We'll take turns being Delmar for the weekend. All right, so I realize we've been chatting for a while. We covered quite a bit. I hope this was a kind of a good experience for everybody. I had a great time kind of learning how the faculty like to use it, and kind of what roadblocks you're running into. That's always what my goal is going into these sessions. I just had a couple of slides to kind of get through before we just kind of wrap this up. One thing I wanted to say is, H5P is much larger in scope than what we've talked about so far. There's lots of different places where you can grab, you can see how other folks are using H5P. I'll reference a few here. See if I can copy that link URL. One such place, or one other repository, large repository, is H5P Studio at eCampus Ontario. Oops, should log out of this account. This was essentially the first studio, if you will, of H5P. There are somewhere in the order of 30,000 H5P resources in here. Something like 5,000 instructors in Ontario creating H5P content. And so you're going to find a lot of different H5P in here as well if you just go searching for it. There's also the Pressbooks directory, where you can also find, and I'll demonstrate how to find Pressbooks within H5P, or H5P within a Pressbooks textbook. If you just go to the pressbooks.directory, I'll share that in here as well. You have the option to be able to filter for books that have H5P. And the way you do that is if you look at the filters section, You can find the H5P accordion here, and just in minimum select one. So we're looking for at least one H5P resource or activity within the book itself. And there are, some 984 books that have at least one H5P activity. And we can see the H5P activity by clicking on the H5P activities button here. So if we're to click on that, it will open up that textbook, and we can see the H5P activities that were created in this resource, or in this book, I should say. And from here, we can, of course, because they're openly licensed, we can download the H5P, reuse it in our own contexts.
So this Pressbook that you just showed us, is this like LibreTexts kind of?
No. So this is outside of LibreTexts. This is a.
I know, it's just
yeah.
like, I'm trying to compare them.
Certainly, yeah. So it's another. They also have an open source platform where you can create textbooks. They're essentially a different way of creating textbooks and whatnot. They don't necessarily have a LibreStudio or H5P Studio per se, where you can just create H5P and just share H5P. You have to create your H5P within your textbook, and it kind of resides in there. That's why we're searching for textbooks that have H5P instead of H5P by itself. So if I was to look for just specifically H5P regarding chemistry, that's not something, unfortunately, I'm going to be able to do in here. But anyway, that I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that there's a lot of, and I'm sure you've all kind of on Twitter or where have you, there's lots of conversation around H5P and different ways of using it, it's something that's continuously growing. Just a couple of weeks ago, there were a number of new H5P content types that were added. One thing I kind of glossed over is when you're creating H5P, check out this newest first option here. If I click on that, it will show me the most recent H5P content types that have been created or added into the library as an option to create H5P. So we have things like image choice, sort the paragraphs, which I find is really interesting, crosswords. We can do AR stuff, sort the paragraphs. This is probably a really interesting, going to be really useful for a lot of folks. We'll just add a task. This will be ABC, DEF, H, I, G. I'm forgetting the alphabet already. It's been a long chat. So let's just say that that's our activity. We're going to go ahead and hit save. Now what the student has to do is essentially drag and drop and reorder this, right? So that goes there, or perhaps that goes there. They can also reorder using these arrows. And so instead of using, there's a few other ways you can build this sort of content type. This is going to be a lot easier. And we haven't had somebody review the accessibility on this content type because it's so new. They are going to review it, but you can already kind of get a sense it's going to be a little bit better, right? Because we have the arrows for reordering. It's a lot more visually kind of accessible already.
Oh, this is really cool. This could maybe replace the issues with the drag and drop that, it's not the same type, but the fact that you can just grab it and move it around and also use the arrows. It would be cool if Nicolas could take a look. Maybe I need to email him. Can you take a look?
Yeah, we're in touch with Nicolas. He's going to be reviewing this very shortly. So hopefully we'll have that green button, right? Where it's it's ready to go kind of thing.
Oh, but thank you. I never clicked on that newest button before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a great way to see kind of what's added new, and there's still about 3 or 4 other new content types that are going to be added in the next couple of weeks. So it's always evolving, and there's always new stuff you can do in there. So
are we open for questions or not yet?
Yeah, you can go ahead with your questions anytime. I'm just kind of
questions and comments. Look at that.
There we go. Yeah, we have a slide.
So I had a question about flashcards.
Sure.
So I had created flashcards like a month ago when I think it was the very first talk that I've been to that you put together.
Sure.
And one thing that happened, maybe I can share my screen. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely. Let me stop sharing mine.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to continue?
Yeah, Begonia is going to teach our colleagues how to use H5P. So,
hold on.
can you hear me? In a few weeks at Flex Day.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Let's see. Where am I? Okay, right here. So I had created this. I didn't do anything fancy. I just kept it for myself. I was just trying, messing around, and I have put this together. And it says list the fat soluble vitamins, and I know them by alphabetical order because it's the easiest way to remember: A, D, E, K. But so there's 4: A, D, E, and K. If I put them in the right order, it tells me that the answer is correct. But if I put them in the incorrect order, then it tells me that the answer is incorrect. I don't remember if the commas are a big deal at all or not. So hold on. A, D, E, K. All right. So the answer, it wants me to do it in alphabetical order, or in the order that I had created the answer, and I don't know how to change that because the answer is correct regardless. So,
yeah, so that's a great question. It's
does
a great
anybody
example.
know the answer to that? Right. So here's what is potentially the most toxic of all vitamins. The answer is vitamin D, but I just typed D and it gave me the incorrect answer. So I don't know. This is beta carotene. I'm not sure if it's gonna beta carotene. I'm not sure if it's gonna do anything. Yeah, that one did it right. But anyway, I just had a few, and that was I'm gonna put B here and see what happened. Lowercase. Okay. So if I don't put B vitamins, right? So it looks it's very touchy. And I'm trying to figure out how to fix that and if it's fixable.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Because otherwise it's going to be very hard for me to use. How am I going to teach this?
Certainly.
This is what I wanted to teach to or not teach it, but at least show it, right, Cristina?
Yeah.
So
I think that this might not be the right.
This is
right
great.
This might not be the right question type for that. I don't know unless Delmar
Delmar 1 or Delmar 2?
Well, Delmar 2 left, so it's just only one Delmar. And
okay.
Then or Stefanie have any ideas? But
so is this I can big bugs?
See it's no, because it's what you wrote is the only answer that it will take, and the way you wrote it is the only way it will take. It's like what happens in Canvas quizzes, right? Unless students type it exactly the same way, capitalized, lowercase, whatever it is, that will be the only answer that they will take it.
Yes, but in Canvas, when I do that in Canvas in a quiz, I give all the possible answers that my students, right? So instead of just putting, I don't know, vitamin, no, but I don't think, well, yeah, probably. But I would put other choices just in case I'm thinking like my students. And so I cover all of the possible answers. And I'm normally almost 99% I got all the answers that they may give to me that they would be correct without them being exactly the same. So A, D, E, and K could be K, E, D, E, or A, or whatever, right? So.
Begonia, my question to you is: Are you quizzing? Are you assessing the student's ability to recall the order? Is the order important? No,
okay. It isn't. I mean, to me, it's easier because it's alphabetical.
The problem is so the problem is the order and is being enforced because that is what you've typed out in text, right? And so H5P or computers in general are very dumb. They only do exactly what they're instructed to do.
Right.
And in this case, you've instructed the computer to say, if it matches this sequence of characters, it is correct.
Right.
And so if the order of the order that the student presents the answer in is not important, then perhaps yeah, look at different content types that might let you do the same thing in perhaps a different way, or add a tip to the students saying that do it in order, do it in alphabetical order.
And things like, what was the other one I had? Like a coenzyme for energy metabolism. It's, you know, B vitamins, and they just put, oh, because I think the question was, what are the vitamins that are coenzymes for energy metabolism? And if they just say B, that's incorrect. They have to type B vitamins. So there is no way for me to add more options for correct answers in flashcards. I guess that would be the right question.
Put it in the instructions or put it on the actual question. Like if you, for example, on the one with the put in the alphabetical order, maybe you should put that in there. Make sure to write it in alphabetical order, capitalize and commas.
Right. Yeah.
That will minimize. So that's what I'm saying. If one, you might look at a different type of of question type, or two, make sure that there's only one way to answer.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know that fill in the blank, you can list different options. And so if you're not using the pictures here, which it looks like you're not,
I was just playing with it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, if you're not in love with that question type, you could change.
Right. The only reason is because my students have a hard time, I think, like learning new vocabulary. So I thought these flashcards would be good for that, because I always tell them, make your own flashcards, but they don't. Which is part of the learning
presentation. Right? You know what Yasin showed, right? Use course presentation can be used as a flashcard. So each slide is a flashcard, but then you can have multiple choice. You can have fill in the blanks. And with that, you can choose more than one correct answer.
Yes.
I think that it is a more interactive, smarter flashcard than the usual flip or, you know.
Right.
Try that.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah. I know. I'm sure there's questions that
you can put a video. Better. You can have a video and that be a flashcard, right? Video with questions.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Okay.
And Yasin just showed you how to you know, bring in different activities into the course presentation to be I mean, they don't have to be all PowerPoint like multiple choice. You could have it in the blanks. You could have, and this, you know, sort the order could be an interesting one too. If you have something that you need to put them in the right order.
Yep, there are things. There are many things. Yeah.
The sequencing of what it is. So.
Yep.
I think flashcards are more useful. I don't know if you saw their example. It's with the picture thingy, like identify this. But you have to spell it like exactly how
I know. Answer should be. Okay. Okay, so the problem is with my questions. Okay. Thank you.
You still have time. You still have a few weeks, Begonia.
Yeah.
You can figure it out.
Time. Piece of cake.
Well, I think, again, Yasin, great job. Stefanie, nice to meet you. It's always great to see other people using
H5P,
LibreTexts, and all the
I know people just do really great things, and I feel like I'm just winging it.
I think
all of us, we're all just winging it.
Yeah, some more than others. Yasin knows a lot for sure on this. I wish you were there when I first looked at H5P 4 years ago. It was like,
oh wow,
and stumbled around, and so yeah. But we have come a long way. So it's great that there is a team, LibreTexts, working on this.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really excited about Studio and H5P, and 7,000 resources, nothing to scoff at. I think there's a bright future there. With that, I just want to say thank you so much for everybody for joining us. Thank you for presenting to our panelists. I'm going to stop the recording right here.